You were born into a story that was already being written. Before you could speak, they gave you a name. Before you could think, they gave you a path. And somewhere between learning to walk and learning to obey, they slipped in the idea that you were free. But let me ask you something. If you've always done what was expected of you, if your goals, your beliefs, your desires all fit perfectly into someone else's system, is that really freedom? No chains, no guards, just pressure. To succeed, to perform, to be normal. They didn't need to lock you in a cell. They built the cell inside your mind. And they made you decorate it. You scroll endlessly through curated lives, chase deadlines that don't belong to you, fill your calendar to avoid silence, and then call that progress. You set goals that exhaust you, measure your worth by your productivity, and apologize for resting. You don't need a master. You've learned to punish yourself. And here's the terrifying part. You believe it's your choice. But what if your entire sense of identity, your routines, your ambitions, even your fears, was constructed by a system designed to make you obedient, not free? This isn't just about society. It's about how deeply its fingerprints are buried in your psychology. This video isn't here to comfort you. It's here to expose something most people spend their entire lives avoiding. We're going to talk about the invisible rules that run your life. The lie of freedom you were trained to believe. The institutions that shaped your body, your schedule, your silence. And what happens when you finally decide to say no? You will not hear this in school. You will not find this in self-help books. And most people around you aren't ready to have this conversation, because waking up means giving up the illusion. But if something in you has been restless, if you've ever felt that quiet ache that your life doesn't really belong to you, then lean in. Because once you see how deep the programming goes, you'll understand why escaping it won't be easy, and why it's the only way to become who you really are. The first step in reclaiming freedom isn't a grand gesture or a dramatic act of rebellion. It starts quietly, deep within the mind. It's the subtle yet powerful realization that much of what people think, feel, and believe isn't genuinely theirs at all. From childhood onward, society carefully scripts these thoughts, quietly installing guidelines on how to behave, what to desire, and who to become. It happens without anyone noticing, slowly, steadily, until conformity feels as natural as breathing. But when someone wakes up to this conditioning, something unsettling yet empowering occurs. There's a moment of intense clarity, and suddenly, the walls of this internal prison become visible. It feels uncomfortable because it's easier not to notice the chains when they've always been invisible. Imagine for a moment a young woman working tirelessly in a job she secretly hates. She doesn't stop, not because she loves her work, but because somewhere along the way, she was taught to equate exhaustion with virtue. Society applauds her discipline. Friends admire her work ethic. Yet deep down, she knows she's betraying something essential. This isn't merely ambition. It's internalized obedience disguised as strength. Her parents encouraged it, teachers praised it, and bosses rewarded it, never realizing they were strengthening her cage. This is social conditioning at its most effective, training individuals to believe that relentless productivity defines their worth. To begin freeing herself, she must first acknowledge this conditioning and recognize that what she's calling her identity might be nothing more than carefully engineered compliance. One powerful strategy in this journey of unlearning is the practice of radical questioning. It's uncomfortable, but profoundly liberating. Each time an individual finds themselves compelled toward a decision, it's helpful to pause and quietly ask, who taught me to want this? Whether it's pursuing a particular career path, maintaining certain friendships, or buying the latest smartphone, simply asking this question creates space for authentic reflection. Suddenly, the difference between genuine desire and conditioned expectation becomes evident. It's a subtle, yet powerful act of resistance. Practicing radical questioning daily creates mental space, providing clarity on what genuinely matters and gradually weakens society's invisible control mechanisms. This practice alone can be enough to shift the trajectory of an entire life. Deprogramming the mind also requires paying close attention to language, the subtle ways individuals speak about themselves and others. Statements like, "I have to do this," or "I should be more productive," reveal deep-seated conditioning. Such language positions the person as powerless, driven by invisible obligations rather than authentic choices. Shifting these expressions from obligation to choice. "I choose to do this," "I prefer to act differently," helps reclaim agency and disrupt mental habits rooted in control. Language is never neutral. It's either reinforcing conditioning or dismantling it. By consciously reshaping internal dialogues, individuals gradually regain autonomy over their narratives. Small linguistic changes accumulate into significant mental shifts, allowing individuals to recognize their inherent power and personal responsibility, breaking free from subtle yet pervasive forms of internalized oppression. Another crucial component in mental deprogramming is intentionally reducing exposure to external sources of conditioning, particularly digital media. Each notification, headline, or viral trend subtly reshapes desires, opinions, and anxieties, pulling people further into the system. Taking regular digital detoxes, days or even hours away from screens, can provide the clarity needed to reconnect with authentic personal values. Instead of endlessly scrolling through curated content that conditions desires for approval and consumption, try practices like journaling, reading profound works, such as Thoreau's Walden, Krishnamurti's Freedom from the Known, or Foucault's Discipline and Punish, or simply spending quiet moments in nature. Stepping away from screens doesn't just reduce stress, it interrupts the constant input of conditioned ideas and images, creating a clear space for genuine thoughts, desires, and self-awareness to emerge naturally. Yet, the process of mental deprogramming is not linear or straightforward. Individuals often discover that beneath societal conditioning lie deeper layers of self-imposed judgments and insecurities. The mind itself resists change because comfort, even when painful, is predictable. Therefore, patience and compassion become critical tools. If the mind returns repeatedly to old habits or conditioned behaviors, frustration is natural but counterproductive. Instead, practice compassionate curiosity. Why do I feel compelled to return to this habit? Rather than self-criticism, choose self-understanding. The compassionate approach ensures mental and emotional resilience during periods of regression or doubt. Gradually, this cultivates the strength necessary to resist the pull of comfort and conformity, creating a sustainable path toward authentic freedom, not merely temporary rebellion or superficial change. An effective and practical method to accelerate mental deprogramming is the conscious cultivation of solitude. Society conditions individuals to fear loneliness, branding it as failure or inadequacy. But solitude isn't isolation. It's intentional self-encounter, the space where genuine self-awareness grows. In solitude, away from external expectations, an individual discovers desires and values, not dictated by anyone else. Regular solitary walks, quiet meditation, or simply spending an afternoon without distractions helps dissolve conditioned identities and fears. Thoreau famously withdrew to Walden Pond, precisely to meet himself away from societal noise. While not everyone needs to retreat physically, creating small pockets of intentional solitude in daily routines can profoundly enhance personal clarity and freedom. It enables a deeper, unconditioned self-awareness, allowing individuals to build their lives consciously, rather than defaulting to conditioned programming. However, recognizing and dismantling conditioning is merely the initial step. True liberation requires learning to reconstruct a new mental architecture, one intentionally built on personal values and conscious choices. Breaking free from past conditioning leaves a void, often uncomfortable and uncertain. Without careful attention, the mind quickly seeks new forms of comfort and conformity. Thus, the real challenge becomes consciously choosing new narratives and behaviors aligned with authentic personal truths. Creating a new mental structure demands clarity, courage, and creativity, qualities not encouraged by the conditioned mind. Yet, this rebuilding process is precisely where genuine autonomy and fulfillment emerge. But how exactly does one begin reconstructing a truly free life outside the pervasive systems of social control? That's exactly where the journey moves next, into understanding how to consciously and courageously build an identity untouched by the system. Identity, at its purest, is never about performance or the approval of others. Yet, society quietly conditions individuals to see their worth through the lens of achievement, productivity, and visibility. A person is often praised for what they accomplish, rather than who they truly are. As a result, countless individuals spend their entire lives performing, projecting carefully curated images designed to win acceptance and validation. This performance becomes so deeply ingrained that it feels natural, authentic, even necessary. Yet beneath every well-rehearsed smile, polished resume, or successful presentation, there's often a profound emptiness. The mind senses something missing, something lost, the genuine self. But how does one rediscover or rebuild a sense of identity that does not rely on external validation or performance? This critical question begins the journey inward, toward reclaiming authenticity. Consider, for example, a young professional climbing rapidly through the corporate ranks. To colleagues, he's driven, successful, the embodiment of ambition. Yet privately, he finds himself emotionally exhausted and spiritually hollow. His identity has become so entangled with achievement and status that he struggles to understand who he'd be without them. In quiet moments, he wonders, am I truly this ambitious, or am I just performing? This realization is both terrifying and liberating. To rebuild an identity free from performance means confronting a hard truth. Much of what he valued was never genuinely his. It was borrowed from society's expectations, cultural pressures, and the quiet judgment of his peers. Acknowledging this allows him to begin consciously choosing values and actions that reflect genuine authenticity, even if they initially conflict with societal measures of success. This process requires individuals to let go of the comfortable metrics they've relied on: job titles, social media likes, income levels, social approval. Instead, identity must be rooted in values that endure independent of external circumstances. Practical steps include identifying values genuinely important to oneself. If kindness, creativity, or freedom resonates deeply, then daily actions and decisions should align with these values, regardless of external reward or recognition. This realignment of behavior and values gradually dissolves the dependence on external validation. Journaling these insights regularly can offer clarity and help solidify these newly discovered authentic elements of identity. Simple reflections like, did my actions today reflect my values, or was I performing, can become powerful tools for reconstructing an authentic identity from within, rather than from external praise or societal norms. Another essential element in rebuilding identity without performance is cultivating relationships built on genuine emotional intimacy rather than transactional validation. Most individuals, without realizing it, subtly engage in transactional relationships. Connections maintained primarily because of mutual benefit, approval, or status. True intimacy, however, doesn't depend on performance or outcomes. It thrives in authenticity, vulnerability, and openness. Building and nurturing these authentic relationships is vital. Simple actions, like honestly expressing feelings or fears without trying to impress or manipulate outcomes, can shift interactions significantly. Gradually, the individual realizes relationships rooted in authenticity, not performance, offer deeper emotional fulfillment and stability. Over time, these genuine relationships reinforce the emerging authentic identity, creating a supportive network that values the individual, not their accomplishments or roles. Rebuilding identity authentically also involves redefining the relationship with failure and imperfection. Society conditions individuals to equate failure with personal inadequacy, which reinforces the idea that one's identity and value depend solely on flawless performance. To escape this mindset, it helps to embrace failure as a natural, essential part of human growth. One practical method is reframing failures as powerful learning opportunities rather than negative judgments about personal worth. Repeatedly affirming, "I failed, but I'm not a failure," begins to break down deeply internalized conditioning. Another practical exercise involves deliberately attempting activities where failure is likely, new hobbies, creative projects, unfamiliar sports, to gradually desensitize oneself to the fear of imperfection. Over time, these intentional encounters with failure build resilience and strengthen the new, authentic identity, free from performance-based self-judgment and fear. However, this process of rebuilding authentic identity isn't without emotional discomfort or self-doubt. Initially, moving away from performance-based validation can feel isolating, even frightening. Society heavily rewards conformity and continuous productivity. So stepping outside these norms often triggers anxiety, guilt, or uncertainty. At such moments, compassionate self-awareness becomes critical. Recognizing discomfort or self-doubt as natural parts of transitioning away from a performance-based identity helps normalize these feelings. Mindfulness techniques, meditation, or guided practices inspired by teachers such as Krishnamurti or Thoreau offer practical support during this emotional turbulence. Learning to gently acknowledge discomfort, rather than suppressing or avoiding it, is essential. Doing so gradually weakens internal resistance and strengthens the emotional foundation necessary to maintain authentic identity amidst external pressures to conform or perform. Creating intentional periods of solitude and silence can also significantly accelerate this identity reconstruction process. Society subtly conditions individuals to fear solitude, branding it as loneliness or isolation. Yet solitude isn't mere isolation. It's an intentional encounter with the deepest, most authentic self, free from external expectations or performances. Regular solitude practices, walking alone in nature, quiet journaling sessions, unplugging completely from digital devices, provide mental and emotional clarity that's impossible amidst constant external distractions. Solitude creates an opportunity to genuinely listen to inner thoughts, emotions, and desires, often drowned out by societal noise. During these quiet moments, authentic identity emerges naturally, unfiltered and unforced. Thoreau Walden exemplifies this powerful practice of intentional solitude as an essential tool for identity reconstruction. Regularly integrating intentional solitude into daily life creates continuous clarity, resilience, and authenticity. Ultimately, rebuilding identity without performance isn't a singular event, but an ongoing, lifelong commitment. It's a conscious choice made daily, moment by moment, decision by decision. Each time an individual resists performing for external validation, each genuine interaction, each authentic action strengthens this new identity. Gradually, authenticity becomes natural, effortless, and fulfilling in ways performance-based validation never could be. But it's essential to remember, the system never stops trying to reassert its control. Cultural messages, social pressures, or internalized conditioning continually attempt to pull individuals back into performance. Vigilance and self-awareness thus become indispensable. Continual reflection, regularly checking alignment between actions and genuine values, is crucial. Yet even when authenticity begins to feel stable, questions remain. How does one integrate this newly authentic identity into everyday rhythms, schedules, and routines that society constantly tries to dictate? This vital question leads precisely into the next step, creating autonomous rhythms that honor personal truth over societal timing. Now you've seen it. The rules weren't made to set you free. They were made to keep you manageable, predictable, productive. And maybe, for the first time, you understand that most of your pain didn't quite come from failure, but from performing a life that was never truly yours. But what are you going to do with this awareness? Because you can't unsee it. Not now. You can't go back to calling exhaustion ambition. You can't keep labeling obedience as maturity. You can't keep apologizing for wanting to feel alive. The system is persistent. It will try to pull you back, with guilt, with fear, with praise. It will tell you that your rebellion is immaturity, that your refusal is laziness, that your questions are dangerous. And you know what? They are. Because the moment you start asking why, you start becoming unpredictable. And that's when you become powerful. So I'll ask you directly, which part of your life feels borrowed? Which belief no longer belongs to you? And what's the first small act of freedom you were willing to claim today, just for yourself? If this video made you uncomfortable, good. That means something inside you is still awake. Write in the comments, I choose lucidity. Let others see that they're not alone in this awakening. And if you're ready to keep unlearning the lies, subscribe, turn on the bell. Because this is not just philosophy. This is your life, and it's time to take it back.